Welcome back to the Gardening with Joe and Holly radio show. Happy you're with us today. Miss any of those coupon codes, you can find those all out at our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, underneath the season, the money tab at the top of the page. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Angel Gist is known as the Perky Plant Parent. She is an author, YouTuber, longtime gardener, and enjoys making things from scratch for herself and her family in her home. Welcome to the program, Angel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us, not only educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. And I'll start with this one. Many people choose to start seeds indoors. Other people choose to buy them. What is your best seed starting tip as we're in that time of frame now? What can you offer all of us that will make seed starting a little easier?
Well, first off, I want to say that there's a lot of information out there, so don't let that scare you from getting started. So many people just freak out and then they never start because they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. But there's so many different ways to garden and start your seeds. You just have to get in there and get your hands dirty and figure out what works best for you, because we all have different budgets and different levels of experience. But one thing that I just recently learned, probably about a year ago, and it's a really important tip, is that there are quite a few seeds that need light to germinate. And that means that you can't cover them with soil, or if you do, it just needs to be like a very light dusting. And there are a bunch of flowers and herbs that really need light to germinate, like cosmos, basil, thyme, chamomile. So all of those need light to germinate, and I could never figure out why my peppermint seeds wouldn't germinate for like years. I would have to every year go buy peppermint, and I was like, I don't know why everyone says it's so easy. It's not easy for me. And really that was the reason why, is they needed light to germinate.
Now, you bring up peppermint. Is peppermint one of those plants that you really should keep in a container? Otherwise, your whole yard is going to be peppermint if you're in a couple of years?
Yes, definitely. Peppermint spreads like crazy. But I don't mind. I love it. But yes, it's best grown in a container for sure, or it's going to be all over your yard.
Well, speaking of containers, you grow in containers. Why this versus in-ground or even like typically traditional raised beds?
Well, I do grow in raised beds, but I do have a ton of containers, and I like those big nursery pots, like 25 and 30 gallons. And the reason we use a lot of containers is because every place that we've ever lived has been a lease house. Okay. So, I mean, we are actively looking for our homestead. So everyone out there, say a prayer for us that we find something perfect. But until we do, we are leasing. And the containers are very easy because they're super easy to move around. And so the last time that we moved from Texas to Oklahoma, and we brought a bunch of our containers, like half of the U-Haul was filled with containers. And Ryan even had to go back and make another trip and get some that we had left there. But I like, the reason I like to garden in containers is because, I teach people how to garden, and just about everyone can garden in containers. So it's pretty easy to show people how to do it like that, because it makes it easier for them to kind of copy that.
And I think
that makes sense.
Yes. And in containers, I think there's a misconception in the gardening world. Oh, I grew in it last year, I've got to dump it completely out and put fresh soil in. And that's simply not the case. It's based on the size of the container. You don't have to dump it all out.
No, not at all. We usually just add some more compost every year. We add some compost, some worm castings. We also have a product that we love called pit moss. And so we just add that because containers can get really hot. And and we found that using this pit moss, which is like a peat replacement, it is so awesome in helping retain moisture, especially because we were in Texas and it was hot, 100-degree temps. That stuff works awesome.
For those of us who have never lived in Texas, or the 30 or 50 or 80 or 40 days of triple digits, does anything grow? And how do you, is it just built into those people down there that, this is just summer, this is what's going to happen, 100-degree days for 2 months in a row? I mean, it's a totally different world.
It is. And that's kind of why we moved, because it just got unbearable for me. And it's a struggle. I mean, if people say you grow tomatoes in full sun, you don't. In Texas, you can't. Not in Southeast Texas anyway. We grew our tomatoes in part shade, like dappled sunlight. So we always put cucumber, like stuff that says full sun. We never grew it in full sun. And like I said, using the pit moss and mulching really good just helps. It helps keep the soil cooler and keeps from stuff frying. And I mean, after 85 degrees, and sometimes in April it's 85 degrees, and it's like your tomatoes are done until the fall if they can hold on.
Right. Or were you in the area of Texas where you basically had two different tomato growing seasons?
Yes. So a lot of times we would start seeds for the fall. We would start those in late July or August to replant or plant them back out. Gosh, beginning of October. I mean, it stays hot there sometimes until the end of November. Mm-hmm. So it just, you have to play it by ear, like every year. Like, is it going to be cool enough yet? So yeah. I mean, it's tough.
Into November here, we've got snow on the ground, sometimes maybe a foot here in the northern portions of the country, and you guys are still harvesting tomatoes, which
yes,
just fascinating how that all works.
It is, and even just us moving here to Oklahoma, it's 8 hours north, but completely different. I mean, the weather is so much nicer. I mean, it's crazy.
That's definitely sounds like a much of a difference. So your YouTube channel is Perky Plant Parent. Tell us more about your YouTube channel and what people can expect when they go there.
Okay, well, my YouTube channel could definitely use a little love. It's kind of like the wicked stepchild for us. It's like the last thing we think about, because we don't really do a ton of long form videos on there. We really want to, but our focus has been on short form content. So we do have a lot of short form content on our YouTube channel, just like all of our other channels. And what we do there is basically organic gardening. We talk about soil health and growing your own food. And just within the last couple of years, I've kind of focused on like herbal medicine, like growing herbs for medicine, or, like lip balms or hand salves, or, that sort of thing. But we also talk about holistic living, and I do some cooking recipes and stuff like that. And I try not to use a lot of additives. I don't really use like refined sugars or seed oils or that kind of thing. So basically just growing food and trying to do it as organically as possible without the use of like herbicides or pesticides or anything like that.
Now, for many of gardeners, we all have that one plant or group of plants that we cannot grow. Do you have any of those that it just you're just like, I've tried, I can't do it, we're going to move on to something more productive?
Well, it's starting to look like it's squash for me. We cannot keep the bugs off of our squash plants, and doing it without pesticides is so difficult. The squash, the vine borers just shred our squash every single year. It's so difficult to grow squash, and maybe it's going to be different here in Oklahoma, but because last year we moved here in July, so we didn't start any of the, we had already grown that in Texas. So I tore out my garden in Texas the end of June, and we moved here, so we didn't do anything else in the summer, and we didn't plant any squash in the fall. So fingers crossed, within the next month or so, we're going to get the squash in the ground, and it's not going to get eaten by the vine borers.
Well, you've also had challenges with deer. You've got a great and cheap and easy deer fencing tip. What is that, and how successful has it been for you?
Well, if are you talking about the fishing line?
Yes.
Okay, so we used that in our very first garden, and then in our next garden, and it worked great. but last fall we tried it and it was a total flop. The first couple of times we did it, we only had seen a few deer. And now where we live, there's a group of 30 or 40 deer that frequent our yard probably on a daily basis. So we put up the fishing line last fall, and needless to say, it did not work. Every single day we'd go out there and more of the garden would be eaten until there was nothing left of it. Oh my goodness, it was crazy. So I think that it does work if there's not a lot of deer. But you're so anyway, a couple of days ago, yeah, I think it will work if you only have a few deer, or a couple here and there, because but if you have a ton of deer like us, I just don't think it's going to work. We were really disappointed that it didn't work, because we really had high hopes. And so anyway, with the help of, suggestions from my viewers, they said, get some deer fencing or deer netting. And so we were going to put that up in the fall and replant everything, and we just didn't do it. So we waited, and a couple of days ago, we just put up the deer netting. So I really hope that that's going to keep the deer out. And everyone is saying, you better hope it's, it needs to be at least 7 or 8 foot tall, or those deer are going to fly over it. I'm like, no, don't tell me that. It is, I think it's about 6.5 feet tall. So
yeah,
I really hope
a little resistance, but like any wildlife, if it's hungry enough, it's going to find a way in. It doesn't care what the barrier is.
I think we're going to plant like some, it's really hard for us because we are leasing, and they really don't want us to do a lot to the yard.
Right.
But we're going to try to maybe put some deer resistant like flowers and stuff on the outside of it. So hopefully they'll smell that and run away.
Fantastic. We really enjoyed having you on the program. Angel, can you tell us how people can find out more about you, find your great information, etc.?
Sure. You can find me on all social media platforms. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube at Perky Plant Parent. And you can also find me on my website at perkyplantparent.shop. And we also have a hemp mulch company. So if you'd like to order hemp mulch, you can find that at mindfulhempco.llc.
Well, Angel, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered us and the education you've provided Holly, myself, and all of our listeners. We thank you for that.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, y'all.
Absolutely.